Welcome to the Augusta Golf Show podcast. Now, here's John Patrick.
Mark Rolfing covers the game for Golf Channel and NBC Sports. And again this year, and for the 9th consecutive year, Mark is my final guest on a final original show of the year. It is a pleasure to welcome Mark Rolfing back to the Augusta Golf Show. How are you, Mark?
I am really good, John Patrick, and I just want to thank you for putting me in this slot at the end of every year. I look forward to it. It's a real honor. There's a couple of numbers that I keep track of. One is how many years I've announced golf for Golf Channel and NBC, and I'm going to start my 39th, if you can imagine that, in January.
Wow!
And how many years that you and I have been on together at the end of the season, and we're getting close to 10. We're not quite there yet, but we're almost there.
Well, we'll get there. I asked you before we went on the air about your Thanksgiving in Hawaii, and I know things are very different. We'll get into that. But in Hawaii, normally, is Thanksgiving a traditional Thanksgiving there, turkey dressing, or is there a different custom?
Well, there's a custom of that, but what happened on Maui was we created a college basketball tournament that I was quite involved in back in the 1980s and 90s, and our company, Rolfing Sports, actually owned and operated the event, which turned into the premier preseason college basketball tournament, the Maui Invitational, and it is played on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of Thanksgiving week. So that changes the dynamic of the week, and it's become, a big part of sort of the Maui tradition. So that has changed Thanksgiving a little bit, but having said that, of course, after the wildfires in August, we weren't able to use the Civic Center this year on Maui, so it was played over in Honolulu.
I'll show you how old I am. You're a little older than me, but I remember Chaminade and Ralph Sampson in that tournament.
Yeah, that was really the what propelled us to say, you know what, maybe there's an appetite for college basketball out here. That was in the early 80s, and really we got involved in the Maui Invitational. It was called the Maui Classic back in 84. It was played over in War Memorial Gym over in Wailuku on the other side of the island, and we decided to move it to Lahaina, and I had a feeling that all the coaches and alumni and traveling groups of supporters and boosters were going to want to play golf on West Maui, and sure enough, I was right, and it's almost like an NCAA tournament. You take a look at what happened last week. I think you had 5 top 12 teams in the country playing. Mm-hmm. It was amazing.
Before we talk about the tournament and things, you mentioned Lahaina. Tell me about Maui. Tell me about Lahaina, how things are today.
Well, I could try and describe them to you, but I can't really. I would say that things are okay. We're trying to make progress. It is such a major task because it was just an unimaginable tragedy, and it is going to take a long, long time to recover. We have a built-in conflict in that people need jobs, and tourism is such a really important element of our economy. But at the same time, we've got all these displaced people, almost 8,000 of them, that are staying in hotels and vacation rentals in place all over the island. And so trying to find permanent housing, we had a housing crisis before the fires. So you can imagine what it's like now. It's just not going to be the same holiday. And I particularly worry about the kids who are being displaced and moving from hotel to hotel and really don't have any place to put presents. So you can put together a package and give them presents, but they don't have anywhere to put them.
Has it building homes on the islands, has that been tough?
Yeah, it's been really tough. Land is scarce. It's a small island, and construction costs are really high. It's just a daunting task. And the fire was the damage was so extensive. Like, where do you start? The people of Lahaina, that is a working town. It's not really a tourist town in terms of residency. There's not a lot of second homes in Lahaina. It was primarily all the people that support and are the working engine of tourism on this island. And so they don't want to move to the other side of the island or even another island. They all want to be able to go home. And nobody can go home yet. It's still a zone poor air quality and water quality, and a lot of things are a big question mark. And it's going to take a long time to even get it cleaned up, let alone where do you start in terms of a rebuild. It's going to be very, very challenging.
How long do you think it's going to take, Mark?
I think it's going to take 10 years.
Yeah.
But, if you think about Lahaina, John Patrick, it was the capital of Hawaii back in the 1850s and 60s, whaling port. And there was so much history to the town that there are 23 structures and historical buildings that have to be replaced. And you need to start with them. The capital has to be rebuilt, the library, the Seamen's Hospital, all those places. And, once you do that, those were all in different sections of town. You can't just build on one side of town one place and then over on the other side of town another place, because we need new roads, we need new electrical grids, we need new sewers, we need pretty much everything. So it's going to be kind of a have to build it almost all at once, which is going to take a tremendous amount of planning and a tremendous amount of money.
We're talking with Mark Rolfing here on the Augusta Golf Show. Is the infrastructure of the islands capable of that, or do you need people from the mainland over there to help?
We have quite a few people here. FEMA has got a lot of people, American Red Cross. That's really not the issue. The issue is creating a safe enough environment in Lahaina right now for people to be able to go in there and do the work that they have to do for cleanup. And you've got to remember that there still is a lot of uncertainty in terms of human remains. And we have to really respect what the people have gone through that lost loved ones and have families and family homes there. You can't just plow everything up and start building new homes and things like that. It deserves a lot of respect, and that's going to take some time. It was such a hot fire, such a devastating fire that it lasted barely over an hour. And so everything was just completely destroyed and melted. And a lot of it is still in place. There are still a lot of cars on Front Street where people perished right there in their cars.
And in a few weeks, the SENTRY Tournament will be played. There was a lot of talk that maybe it wouldn't, maybe it shouldn't, maybe it couldn't. Tell me a little bit about how it came together to happen and what it will mean for the community.
Well, there were two real driving forces here, and then a third came along and really jumped on board. So the first one was the sponsor. I've never met a sponsor in my life like SENTRY Insurance. A small company based in Wisconsin. They were actually out here the last 3 days looking at things and trying to understand what it's going to be like a month from now. But they were absolutely adamant that we were going to play on Maui. They felt like it was really important for the recovery of the island, and they were absolutely right. It would have been devastating to not be able to have this tournament. The second was the PGA Tour, which owns and operates the event. It's a championship management event. And they knew that they were going to have a real struggle in terms of where do you get tents now? Where do you get all the stuff that you need to stage, one of the signature events in this new PGA Tour schedule? And it was going to be very costly. And they knew financially they were going to take a big hit. And they sucked it up and said, we're going to do it. And when those two entities said, we want to do it, the players basically jumped on board very quickly and have been so supportive. They want to come. And even defending champion John Rahm is saying, we're not coming really to Kapalua this year. We're coming to Lahaina. There's so much more that we have to do while we're there than just go out and play for $20 million.
Mark, realistically, what can they do? Is it ceremonial, or can something like this make a true and honest difference?
I think it can make a big difference. First of all, with the messaging, they've heard enough from Mark Rolfing about what has to happen here and how important it is to generate funds. But, when you hear from the best players in the world, it makes a difference. And we've already seen it. Xander Schauffele has been tremendous and already offered tremendous financial support. And then you have a number of players who've been coming here for years that really have become part of the community. Jordan Spieth, I would put in that category. He loves this place, and Lahaina is part of the fabric of their experience every year. So you've got guys like that really want to do things. We've had the lead PGA Tour official, that's our advanced guy, Mark Deuce-Bobick. He came out in October for a week with his wife and volunteered at a distribution center, and he's coming back for Christmas and volunteering again before he starts advancing on the tournament the week after. You've got a guy like Colin Morikawa, whose grandfather owned a restaurant in Lahaina. Mm-hmm. He's got a tremendous tie there. And so you have a lot of interest from the players in different areas. A couple of guys that are very much into humane society type things and animals and pets, and that has been a tragedy in itself here. So it really is a conglomeration of very, very influential and important people that are coming together and saying there is no way that we can't do this tournament. We have to do it, and it will be an incredible platform for the beginning of the recovery.
A little golf talk. Why is that golf course so perfect for that tournament at this time of the year?
I'll tell you what I like about it, and I think this is what the players like about it more than anything. It's not that hard. Like, if you started out the first tournament of the year with a golf course on a setting like that was as difficult as Wildlife Country Club, where they play Sony the week after Sentry, I don't think players would like it. They like the fact that week one, where they're playing with new equipment, a lot of them, they've had a little bit of an off season now, which is really good. And they don't have to worry about driving the ball that straight, and they can have fun, and they can bring family. Almost everybody's coming with families these days. And so you do not see a lot of guys on the practice tee all day long like you would, in the middle of a season. I think it's more, they're kind of easing their way into the season a little bit.
The course went under some extensive work a couple of years ago. Anything different since last January?
No, there really isn't. The dilemma with the Plantation course, John Patrick, forever has been that it was too difficult for the average player and too easy for the PGA Tour, and it's still kind of that way because you've got, John Rahm and guys like that shooting in the mid-30s under par, and yet the average tourist, especially when the wind blows up there, really struggles, and it's primarily because of the greens. So in 2019, when we did the redo with Bill Gore and Ben Crenshaw, the main goal was to soften the greens, and that was accomplished. And, they are not nearly as difficult. A lot of the greens that had 2 or 3 levels are now single-level greens, or a smooth, slow transition instead of, sharp plateau areas on the greens. So the putting is much easier. And that's why if we don't have our normal trade winds, which we haven't had the last couple of years, there really is no defense for the course.
For the recreational golfer, Mark, is 17 a par 4 or a par 5?
I don't even want to begin to tell you what the real yardage on that thing is. I think we finally threw out the rangefinders and said we can't use these because my guess is it's 545, 550 yards. Back there, but it's all the way it plays. And if you look at the 3 key elements, you've got wind, slope, and grain in the grass. Those are the 3 big elements out here. And with that piece of property, all 3 of the elements go in the same direction. So 17 is downhill, downwind, downgrain. If you think about the yardage of the course, it looks like it's a really monster long course, but effectively it's one of the shorter playing courses on the PGA Tour. There's 5 par 4s under 400 yards, or right at 400 or less. But all the yardage is from the 17th tee down to the first green. You've got a 550, a 670, which is the par 5 18th, and then the first hole, which is another 535 par 4. So all the yardage is in those 3 holes, but it's all downwind, downhill, downgrain.
When you think back on professional golf in 2023, give me a couple of things that stick out as being memorable.
Wow, a lot really happened at the end of the year. Unfortunately, I have to say that when I think back on it, I think a lot more about what happened off the golf course than what happened on the golf course. I've never seen a situation in all my years, I doubt you have either, where things at the top are so topsy-turvy. And I really believe between now and the Century, which is a month from now, this might be almost the most important month in the history of the PGA Tour, because we have no idea how this organizational structure is going to work. There's a lot of pressure to get this deal done, which the time frame was for the end of the year. Whether that'll happen, I don't know. I kind of doubt it, but certainly listening to Tiger in the Bahamas this week, he feels like it's important to try to make that deadline. But even the great events were all affected by things happening off the course. Look at the Ryder Cup. All we talked about at the Ryder Cup was, political dynamics and whether guys were wearing hats or, having their own spaces in the locker room. It seemed like it was a year where so much was happening off the course it overshadowed the on-the-course play.
We're talking with Mark Rolfing here on the Augusta Golf Show. Okay, on the golf course, bigger surprise, Wyndham Clark at the U.S. Open or Brian Harman at the Open Championship?
Oh, boy. Probably Wyndham Clark. I would say, Brian Harman has always been kind of a bulldog. I've always liked the way he plays, particularly in the tougher championships. L.A. Country Club was a perfect fit for Wyndham Clark. And if you think about that last tee shot that he hit on that 72nd hole, that ball would have been, a lost ball or unplayable lie on just about every other course that he played all year long. In fact, he hit a slice the top tracer showed, that it was almost going out of play totally. And, we come back and here's the ball in the fairway. So it was a perfect setup for Wyndham Clark. But still, it was a surprise. I don't think people had any idea how good Wyndham Clark really is.
You mentioned Tiger. Tiger talking in the Bahamas, and he made a comment earlier this week that, maybe if he can, he'll go once a month next year, maybe. What'd you think when you heard him say that?
I think that was a little bit. I think he really would like to try to do that. If you look at the PGA Tour schedule these days, there is, pretty much one big tournament every month now. They've got them pretty nicely spaced out. But I always, look at Tiger and I think, all right, what is the real motivation here? And is there anything going on, that we're not aware of? We're fully aware of the fact that he is now on the PGA Tour Policy Board. He's a sixth vote for the players, which they really need and really wanted. And now they've got it in Tiger Woods. And frankly, if Tiger Woods plays 12 tournaments a year, if he were to play 10 or 12 next year, that would increase the value of the PGA Tour asset so tremendously that any deal, whether it's with the Saudi PIF Fund or whether it's with other private institutional investors, I think that was in a way kind of a statement of, we're going to really, roll out the PGA Tour at its best, because you can talk about Jon Rahm and Victor Hovland, who I think is the best player in the world right now, and Scotty Scheffler, who had just an incredible year, or Ludwig Aubert, who, just came, out of nowhere, straight from college into being one of the absolute best players in the world. None of those guys are going to dramatically impact the way people view the PGA Tour, like Tiger Woods would if he plays again.
How did that happen, Mark? Why do we love? Is it because they're the best that's ever done it? Is that why we love Tiger? Is that why we gravitated back to Tiger even after all we've been through? I mean, we've, at our ages, we've been blessed. We've seen Arnold, Jack, Tiger, Michael Jordan, Kareem, LeBron, whatever. Is that why we gravitate toward Tiger?
I think so. We are suckers for a great comeback story, and how many have we had from Tiger? 4 or 5? We didn't have that with Tiger and Jack. Those guys were playing 30, 40, 50 years in a row in the Masters. Jack didn't miss a Masters for how long? Guys weren't getting injured back then. You didn't play the same kind of game that's being played now, and the amount of stress that goes onto these athletes' bodies just wasn't the same back in the Tiger Jack era. So we're a real sucker for, for comebacks. But also, I think so much of it was because of the way Tiger played. They loved the way he played the game. He changed the way the game was played, and it was an exciting brand of golf. He showed tremendous emotion. It wasn't like Patrick Cantlay going out there and just absolutely surgically dissecting a golf course. It was exciting golf, even though it was precision golf. It wasn't all power golf, but it was exciting golf. And we're just big suckers for a comeback story.
Is it the comeback story, or is it, I take great pride in the fact, and there may be more, but I've been there for every one of Tiger's Masters wins. I just love the fact that, I may have been able to see the greatest player to ever play the game. And you could say that about LeBron. Yeah, I mean, you could say it about Jack and Arnold and things like that. But I just love the fact that, God, this may be the best it ever gets.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see the game played the way Tiger played it. It's the constant argument, John Patrick, about, who's the greatest player of all time. Was it Jack Nicklaus or Tiger Woods? You can argue both sides of that. But I don't believe you can argue who played the best golf when they were at their best. When Tiger was at his best, he played the best golf that's ever been played. And he did it pretty regularly at the same venues and at the same kind of venues. He was so dominant, not just Augusta, but, Orlando, Bay Hill or Memorial, or, just he had certain places where he could really let it go and really shine. Torrey Pines. And so, I think people like great sprint runners, and I still believe people like dominance in sports. I think they like Rafa Nadal. I think they like Roger Federer. I think they love seeing performances, that just are so out of this world that nobody can beat them. I think they like that more, than actually real tight finishes every week.
What do you think, in your mind, golf accomplishment? What's Tiger's greatest golf accomplishment?
Oh, I got to think the U.S. Open, Pebble Beach. I was there. I'll never forget the Friday there because I was going out with Tiger, and he was teeing off theoretically late in the day, and so I started with Jack Nicklaus, who was playing his final hole ever in a U.S. Open. And I don't know if you remember that transition, but it was delayed because of weather and ended up going into Saturday. But I actually got to go walk on the air for NBC the last 6 holes with Nicklaus, and I walked right off that 18th green and up to the first tee and went out with Tiger Woods. And when I watched Tiger Woods play, now Jack Nicklaus obviously was a lot older than Tiger and was in the twilight of his career. But it just was a different feeling. It was a different feeling with the fans, and the way he, took on Pebble Beach and what he did. It was the greatest sports performance I think I've ever seen. And obviously, I'm biased toward golf, but that one, I don't know if that'll ever be duplicated. What he did at Pebble Beach in 2000.
I'm fascinated by what you say there, Rolf, for a few reasons. One, Tiger says his greatest accomplishment was winning 3 USGA juniors because he only had the 3-year window to do it. You could talk about 142 consecutive cuts made. You can talk about the Tiger Slam. And yet, there's also the 2000 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach.
Yeah, people forget it was the greatest putting I've ever seen. And in fact, that whole summer of 2000, I don't ever remember him missing an 8-foot putt. Ever. The whole summer. And you could just see it, especially coming down the stretch on Sunday at Pebble. The par he made, I think it was at 16 maybe, where he made this sort of curling 15-footer around the back of that green, which is a really severe green. to save a par. He just did not want to make a bogey. He had a 15-shot lead or whatever it was. It was just an incredible performance.
Do you think we see him on the Champions Tour?
I don't know. I just can't imagine that he would be motivated to do that. But you never know. You know, he is going to do now, hopefully, a lot of things that are going to really help the game that he loves so much. His legacy, I believe, is written on the course. I don't know that there's anything that he could do now that would dramatically change his legacy, even if he won another major. Let's say he did go down to Augusta and won the Masters this year. I don't think it would have the kind of impact that he is going to be able to have away from the course. And in the second part of his life now, which he's really entering the second part of his life, I think his legacy off the course is not written yet. There's parts of it that are written, and some of it isn't great, obviously. But he has a chance to change that. And I really hope, and I think he will, take advantage of whatever the situation is. And it might be good for him to have a few Champions Tour appearances. It wouldn't surprise me if he did that.
What would you like to see happen in professional golf in 2024?
I'd like to have everybody kind of sober up a little bit and realize that golf is a niche sport. It is not the NFL, not the NBA or Major League Baseball. There's been this major push to try and increase purses, put more pressure on tournaments, to provide more prize money, that golfers as athletes, should get paid commensurately with the other top athletes in the world. I'm worried, John Patrick, that we're getting to a point where the game may not be sustainable. I think for what they deliver within the sports world, golfers are extremely well paid. Extremely well paid. And I just hope this pressure to continue to play for more and more money. And it's never going to be more evident than we're going to see right here on the tiny island of Maui in a month, where you've got 59 players. They're going to be going out there playing for $20 million in the shadow of what was, one of the great tragedies we've seen in America in a long, long time, maybe in history, with an entire town being destroyed. And so I just don't know that we can continue on this path of more and more and more at professional golf. And I hope we can figure out a way to trickle that down to, the average player, the recreational golfers, the 99% of the people that make the game what it is.
I live vicariously through you, Mr. Rolfing. Living in Hawaii, when things are normal, what is an average day like for you and Debbie?
Well, I tend to get up a little earlier than her. We've got a 12-year-old now. It's kind of in permanent residency with us. And so taking him to school and in the current situation where a couple days a week he's online trying to figure out how to even turn a computer on for me is complicated. But for me, living in Maui and working basically on the mainland or around the world has become sort of part of my lifestyle. And what I like Maui to be for me is something that kind of grounds me. And now in today's world here on Maui over the last few months, that would be to go down to the distribution center down here in Kahana, 3 miles down the road, and help distribute meals or food or water or whatever it is. I like having something that grounds me, and Maui does that for me.
He is Mark Rolfing, covers the game for NBC Sports and Golf Channel. As we said at the beginning, for 9 consecutive years, he has come on this program at this time of the year. It's the last original show I'm going to do until the first of the year. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the friendship, Mark, and the fact that you always say yes when I ask, and I really can't tell you how happy I am. And I know it was a decade ago, and we don't talk about it a whole lot, but I'm glad you're still here, Mr. Rolfing.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, that was a close one a decade ago, but we made it through that. And I want to tell you right now, I will see you in April for my favorite week of the year at Augusta National. And let's just book next year's year-end show right now.
Okay, I'll do that. And maybe we'll share some pasta at Luigi's.
Oh, that sounds like a good idea. Take care of yourself and keep up the good work, John Patrick. You're really one of the constants in the game that makes it so great.